While there's a lot of great running backs in the NFL, there's no one quite like Christian McCaffrey. You can put him in the slot or the backfield and he'll be an all-pro in both positions. But unfortunately for the 49ers, he's been dealing with a calf injury that kept him out week 1. So to replace him, San Francisco sent out Jordan Mason, who continued to look like the modern day beast mode in this game. He's not only second in the league with 147 rushing yards, but throughout the Jets game, you could tell Mason was wearing down the Jets defense. So in this video, I want to break down what really makes Mason a great back, as well as other skill players that really stood out to me. But starting out with Mason, on the day he averaged a whopping 5.2 yards a carry, which is nearly a yard more than the average back in 2023. But what separates Mason from just a brute runner of a back is how complete he is. On this cutback, for instance, he can see the hole forming, cuts it back, breaks not one tackle, not two, but three, and then you have to love how he finishes his runs. He's always looking to get additional yardage, and he often does. And while a lot of people think the success of a cutback is just due to the blockers, on this play you can see how well Mason actually sells this, and this gets these backers flowing towards this play as well. Then once that cutback lane actually did form, Mason was able to hit it hard. Then he drags these defenders once again for additional yardage. Despite being such a brutal running back though, it is nice to see Mason consistently choosing the right holes. Here for instance, he could have easily tried to run through 57, but he cut it back on him, got skinny in the hole, and picked up additional yardage because of this. For years though now, I've been saying Jordan Mason is a great running back. But what really separated himself in this game is how explosive he truly looked on the field. On this power run for instance, once Mason turned this corner, this defensive back had no chance of catching him. So while I wouldn't put Mason in a speedster category, it does look like he's a lot more explosive than last year. And even if Christian McCaffrey does decide to come back, Mason will wear down your defense. When you're watching some of these brutal hits for instance, you can just tell later on they don't want to come back for that tackle. And rather than putting Christian McCaffrey in on the goal line where there's often heavy box looks which can lead to him getting injured more often, might as well put Jordan Mason in there, who's basically built for this. And the best part for Kyle Shanahan is you don't necessarily need to tip your hand for what you're going to do on that play. On a lot of these plays, Mason would actually go out and catch passes. On this third down play for instance, Mason not only beats this linebacker with a quick out, but also makes the contested grab. I'm not saying Mason is Christian McCaffrey, but he's definitely an offensive weapon that needs to be utilized a lot this year. So headed forward, I would really like to see Kyle Shanahan pull out his two-headed monster that he has in the backfield. But outside their running back and Jordan Mason, their fullback and Kyle Juszczyk not only opened up the running lanes, but also had the same number of catches as Brandon Aiyuk with 2. It was also interesting to see how much Kyle Juszczyk was utilized as a tight end 2 for San Francisco. And on this play, I thought he did a nice job of chipping this defensive end to help out Trent Williams, and somehow was able to hold on to this pass despite being absolutely drilled. His best play of the day though came on the play action wheel route. As already highlighted in this video, Mason has his way with this defense, and you can tell how this causes these linebackers to jump up and freeze on this run from Mason. And then once it turns out to be a play action pass, Juszczyk has already placed too much ground between him and the backer. Outside of Juszczyk, I also thought George Kittle had himself a pretty decent day. While he's a great blocker, his routes are some of the best of any tight end in the game. On this out route for instance, he doesn't slow down at all, which causes a ton of separation between him and this linebacker. And despite losing 30 pounds of muscle this offseason due to a core muscle surgery, he continues his aggressive approach to the game that's made him great. And on his most explosive play of the day, I loved how he showed off not just his athleticism, but his ability to read a defense. Here you can see they're in zone coverage and also the pretty open hole forming. So in order to effectively attack this weakness, Kittle accelerates out of his break on this corner pattern and then attacks the ball in the air. So even though Kittle is 30 and has gone through his share of injuries, I do expect him to be productive throughout this season. But moving off Kittle and into their wide receivers, Jauan Jennings looked to prove San Francisco right for extending him through the 2025 season throughout this game. Big reason why Jennings is able to find success at the NFL level despite not running a 4.4 is how well he understands players' leverages. On this in-breaking route for instance, Jennings is attacking the outside shoulder of Reed in order to have him flip his hips. And once he does, this gives him the ability to cut back inside, and by that point, Reed is really out of position. And now on this play, the defense is running zone coverage, but Jennings has a similar type of in-breaking route. So rather than cutting outside in this time, he eliminates those wasted steps to get in front of the safety and behind these linebackers as quickly as possible. And just like San Francisco's other weapons, he's an absolute monster with the ball in his hands. And he also has a great understanding of how Purdy wants to attack a defense. Once again, running an in or a dig right here, he stops in the soft spot of the zone, and this adjustment allows them to pick up 15 on this play. But maybe most importantly for San Francisco, he continues to earn his namesake 3rd and Jauan, even when the opposing team illegally hip drop tackles him. But moving off Jennings, Deebo Samuel also had a nice outing. But with that being said, I don't necessarily think you need to utilize him as a running back. It's a lot of wear and tear for one of your better wide receivers, especially when you can get him involved on these end arounds where he doesn't need to deal with those inside linebackers and defensive linemen. Continually stands out to me about Deebo Samuel is his acceleration. On this simple checkdown, for instance, he just appears to have a different type of gear than everyone else. And even though everyone labels Brandon Aiyuk as San Francisco's man beater, in this game, that would have to go to Deebo Samuel. And once Kyle Shanahan does create a little space, like here on this angle route for Deebo, he's going to pick up a ton and the first down. Outside of Deebo Samuel, Brandon Aiyuk coming back from his contract negotiations looked pretty rusty. He only had 2 catches on the day for 28 yards, with his most notable play being a drop pass on a dime from Brock Purdy. If you're getting paid $30 million a year, you have to grab this. Going forward though, I do expect Brandon Aiyuk to shake off this rust and return to the form we saw him in last year. But ultimately, these are just some of my thoughts about San Francisco's performance week 1 and some of the skill players that stood out on the offensive side of the ball, and I want to hear who stood out to you. It would also mean a ton to me if you could like and subscribe, and as always, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day.